we then have some resistance really being created with Venus square the natal Saturn of Bitcoin. I really love looking at Saturn, especially when we're looking for, you know, some sort of signs and days around potential price action. I do feel like if we haven't already seen it, you know, June 6th, June 7th, June 8th really then goes and creates like, here's the roof, like it's being created. So just resistance, constraints, and a big sign of like we need to adjust in the market. So this, you know, is a really great time to maybe look at, if you are looking at taking short-term profits, maybe in those more like, you know, your leverage trading side of things, or just preparing yourself for little pullbacks, potentially little pullbacks. But I feel like this is really going and creating that resistance, that top. But it's good signs, because we also have for example, on the following day, June 9th, Mars, and this is on a macro level, it's not just for Bitcoin, but we have Mars shifting into Taurus. And this is, I mean, we just came out of Taurus season. We spoke a lot about Taurus. We love Taurus, and it's so good for the economy, because especially economy and for crypto in particular during this time, because I feel like Taurus is such a cool, we may have hit this resistance, we may have hit this like top for now, but let's reassess the market and our position so that we can create and prepare for long-term stability, long-term resilience. So from June 9th is Mars coming into Taurus. And I love this because Mars is ruled by Aries. So as Andrew was touching on earlier, that Aries, that Mars energy is, you know, the energy, the drive, the action, assertiveness, competition, passion. And I do feel like with crypto, it does create like probably more volatility than expected. And I mean, with the news that we just had on June 7th, it just makes sense to have that. But with it being in Taurus, it's this assertive energy creating this steady, practical, and resource focused nature, thanks to Taurus, right? It brings a combination and a shift from impulsive actions, because Mars was just in Aries, to a more deliberate, grounded approach, which if we tune into, as Claire was just saying, okay, all this stuff is going to come up with Neptune, but use that groundedness state, that groundedness approach to tackle these various potential scenarios that may come up. And again, it's just really about the long-term investments and building a solid foundation instead of being in a time of impulsive trading. Mars, again, as Andrew was saying earlier, like does stimulate conflict. It is the planet of war. But in Taurus, these conflicts are likely to revolve around material resources, values, financial interests. And I also feel like it's that war that there is on who can get their hands on Bitcoin as much as possible. Like, I feel like this is really the time that they want to shake the average person out. They want to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. The supply is limited. So where are they going to get their Bitcoin from? Well, there's only so much being created every day. We've had the halving. The amount that's being mined daily has been halved. So where else are they going to get more Bitcoin from? Seeing as they're buying up, institutions are buying up more Bitcoin daily than the amount of Bitcoin that is being mined daily. So where are they going to get it from? They're going to get it from people like you and me. So I feel like that's kind of the Taurus, the Mars in Taurus period that we're going to be going through. But good for long term. Once again, if you look at it from the short term, it looks like, oh no, like we're not smooth sailing to the upside, but this is really good for that long term. So yeah.
I think I think that's always the focus. And especially at this time in the market, like we will shift our perspective at some point, but we're not there yet. And so what I sort of really want to
Mm,
communicate to the people that are listening is that even when we're talking about like altcoins and things like that, from my perspective, like, and especially with Bitcoin, like Bitcoin, I'm looking at the long term. Like I'm not even with Bitcoin, I'm not even looking at this cycle. But with
yeah.
these altcoins, I'm looking at this cycle. So even though we're looking at these movements by the day and between each, half moon, we're looking at those, we're breaking those down. I'm not really looking at that short a time period. And so we do sort of like, I want to, impress on you guys to have that sort of like longer time preference. And yeah, when we're getting towards the end of the cycle, when we start seeing those signs, we will absolutely be shifting. We're not going to be telling you to stay in these coins for too long. Like I personally am out of
Yeah.
every coin at the end of the bull run for sure. But
Yeah.
at this point in time, we're not there yet. So we're really still looking at that long term. We're looking at laying that foundation. And yeah, that's where we're at. So don't worry,
Yeah.
we will shift gears when the time is right. But right now it's the planting seeds point of the cycle, in my
We are
opinion.
still planting seeds. I agree. I fully agree. And so if anybody is like brand new also to crypto and you're like, this is the first time I'm even like getting involved in this space, like you're a little late to the party, but there's still plenty of drinks and food to go around. So you're good. There's still time.
Absolutely.
And I mean, June 10th, we already talked a little bit of that Neptune sextile natal Mercury. I feel like that really plays with that Neptune and just being planted. Be careful of that the news and the face YouTubers. So just be careful of that. Um, June 10th, there was another transit that did you want to touch on that one, Claire?
Yes, absolutely.
An important one with the Midheaven. I love Midheaven.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Just bring it up. Yeah, so we've got Jupiter semi-square, Bitcoin's natal midhaven. So this brings a time of increased visibility and public attention to Bitcoin, which again totally aligns with Gemini season, totally aligns with what we've been talking about with Mercury's influence as well. So coupled with optimism and potential for speculative behavior. So this is a minor challenging aspect. So it does suggest a little bit of friction that could affect Bitcoin's reputation and maybe lead to some short-term volatility. So, but Jupiter's expansive growth, abundance, optimism, opportunity, positive energy, that influence can lead to overconfidence possibly and maybe excess risk taking if not managed properly. So the midhaven represents this career, in a person it represents career. Really for Bitcoin we're looking at public image, reputation, and overall standing in the world. So for Bitcoin, the natal midhaven signifies its position and influence in the financial markets and its public perception. So the semi-square, as I said, is a minor challenging aspect. And it indicates a little bit of friction and tension, less intense than a square for sure, but just maybe some minor obstacles or adjustments that require attention and effort to overcome. So yeah, I think it's gonna be that focus. And I think again, we're always gonna see that, like we were talking about with that Neptune influence, like possibly misinformation. We at the beginning,
Mhm.
following through our episode, at the beginning, we're talking about a lot of new eyes on Bitcoin. And then we're talking about this illusionary quality of Neptune maybe leading to misinformation. And then we're coming to this semi-square aspect as well, which is sort of saying like we need to be conscious of how we're like, when we're first learning about Bitcoin, it's a lot. The you know, the bridge to education, there's a lot, very much a lot at the beginning, and then you kind of like reach this threshold where you're like, oh, actually this isn't as complicated, as scary, as foreign and uncomfortable, and oh, actually Bitcoin is like, transactions are way easier than like internet banking. And so at the beginning, it feels like a lot. And in that time when people are just newly learning about Bitcoin and crypto, there is that opportunity for overhype, over excitement, over skipping over the details. Like, you want to understand the foundational reason of why crypto, why are we here? This isn't just another asset to gamble on. So I think that that's more what we're talking about here. And also, there are a lot of people that don't want Bitcoin or cryptos to succeed. They are powerful people. And so we may see some, these kind of ridiculous headlines from 2015 that seem to pop up every cycle of Bitcoin's a scam, it's used for money laundering, funds terrorism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody reports on how the dollar is used to fund scams and terrorism and money laundering. Only focus on Bitcoin. So expect to see these kind of things. And for someone new to crypto, when you hear those headlines, you don't know that those have been happening since 2015 and debunked 1,000 times. There may be that potential to affect that public perception of Bitcoin. So I think that that's more what we're going to see. Again, the usual debunking that we do every cycle of some of the more ridiculous things about Bitcoin. So yeah, but it can also cause a little bit of volatility in the market too.
Yeah. I feel like that's like this whole period coming up. Like, for example, then we do have on June 12th, again, like I'm here looking at Cryptocraft and just the different red folders. I mean, this is a pretty big day. June 12th, we have FOMC, we have economic projections, FOMC statement, FOMC press conference. We have this is the US federal funds rate. We have US CPI for the year and US CPI for the month, and the US core CPI for the month. So that's a lot happening in that day. And it beautifully aligns with our astrology. We have both, well, there's actually a lot, not even both, more than both. So we have the sun, Mercury, and Venus that are squared the natal Saturn. So think about what we spoke earlier with natal Saturn. And the sun, Mercury, and Venus are also squared the natal Uranus of Bitcoin. And also the sun, Mercury, and Venus are trine the natal Neptune of Bitcoin. So this is a lot happening here, and I feel like it's funny because it's like a mix of like challenges, and then you have the trine that's harmonious with Neptune. But like Claire was saying, sometimes when we even have a harmonious aspect happening with Neptune still doesn't always then play out super favorable in terms of price. The squares to the natal Saturn and Uranus, they indicate again, potential, as we have the statements coming out, maybe things in regards to regulation, to how they want to use Bitcoin or not use Bitcoin, maybe challenges, maybe structural challenges. That's very much also Saturn, like the structure and the challenges that may arise from that, as well as the possibility then, of course, of the market reacting from that. Be very grounded in that Taurus energy, okay? For us traders and investors, at the same time with the Trine and Neptune, this can just bring waves of different emotions, which I believe will just be played out from people probably reacting from the news that's coming up. Actually, just side note, have you seen there's this real TikTok going around, and it's like Jerome Powell, and he like walks up to the microphone and he's like, good morning. And then it's like a massive red candle, and then he like says like so let's begin. And then it's like this massive green candle. And it's just like, but it's funny, but it's so true. Like this man now just affects the market so much. But why? Well, probably because institutions or big money players are taking advantage of the news and making certain moves, but also because now, people are expecting it and they get emotional, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like that's a lot of like the Neptune and just, I mean, on the positive side of things, it can be like enhancing perception, enhancing intuition, and also communication, which really can flow either way. So it could be favorable. I hope I'd like to look at, then maybe we might see some more like creative innovation and overall then optimistic sentiment. I hope that things do come out that are positive towards maybe not just Bitcoin or Ethereum, but just maybe the overall crypto market or our economy as it stands. And I just don't feel like this is an easy transit. I feel like it's complex. I feel like I always go back to, in the long term, especially when we look at the outer planets, this is transformative. This is positive long term for Bitcoin, but it's just going to come with challenges. So we got to make the most of the opportunities that come along from this, remain adaptable during this time, and just be careful during this time, because volatility is just the constant word. And Neptune, let's blame it on Neptune this time around.
Well, I mean, even on that same day, well, it's the 11th for me actually, but 12th for America. We have Mars square Pluto. And so again, this is more a macro perspective. It's not necessarily, Bitcoin's aligning with transits on Bitcoin's natal chart, but this is what everybody's going to go through. So I just thought this one was quite interesting in terms of conflict, because we've got Mars square Pluto bringing a period of like increased tension, volatility, and potential power struggles. So as you said as well, when you're looking, this also is like, could mean sharp price fluctuations for Bitcoin, potential conflicts over regulation and market control. So I thought that was interesting. This is something, the word market control, I thought was just, interesting, because we just had this last week, that the Congress has passed that the Federal Reserve cannot create a CBDC in America, which is amazing news, positive news, because it gives well, hold on a second. It gives the Federal Reserve.
Let me stay in my happiness.
I mean, it is definitely positive, because it gives the Federal Reserve way too much power, but it's like, it's protecting the government. It's not, and
yeah, it is.
Some people have then been talking also about the Federal Reserve, the government, the Treasury may attempt to sort of, like, there are bills also being passed. There was one by Senator Massey, I think it was this week or the week before, end the Fed. Now, there have been many end the Fed bills in the past, but this one was brought up, and the reason that they've never really gained traction in the past is because there is this like unholy alliance between the US Treasury and the Federal Reserve, and they sort of like play this game with each other and have a very, very beautiful close friendship, but a sort of like insidious friendship. Whereas these kind of bills may take hold if the government is wanting to push that forward. And it doesn't mean there isn't a CBDC or something like that, a digital dollar coming to the US. It just may be a GB. It may be a government digital currency. Like, so a GDC rather than a CBDC. So instead of a central bank digital currency, it may be a government controlled currency. So look, this all remains to, we have no control over these things anyway. So it's kind of better to just let them play out. But I think it is good that at least it does have to go through Congress if there was anything like that to be passed. And that sort of is something that America like has more than other, there's a bit more accountability there in America rather than in other countries. I don't think there is as much accountability personally, but I mean, look, in my opinion, also the accountability in America is also bought and paid for. So is it really accountability? But at least there are those processes there, and there are power struggles within that, right? Within the corruption. But so
Yeah,
yeah, this
100%.
Mars square Pluto again, you know, Pluto is this transformative power applied to technology, innovation, and collective movements. So it really does bring radical changes and disruptions. So the square is a challenging aspect. It creates tension, it creates conflict, and the need for resolution. So on a macro level, there was also news this week that President Xi issued a warning and, you know, said that the US better adhere to the one China policy, which includes Taiwan. Otherwise, there will be consequences. So we don't love this kind of talk. You know, we have enough conflict in the world. There's already horrendous things happening, innocent people's lives getting absolutely destroyed or taken entirely. So I think there is, during that time, 11th, 12th, there is going to be a lot of tension. And invariably that does have a knock-on effect as well on the financial markets. But I think out of these kind of challenging aspects where there is tension, there is conflict, you know, sometimes we need to have confrontation because we need to like hash it out, we need to negotiate, we need to sort of thrash it out. And out of that conflict, on the other side of that tension, that conflict, there comes, and this is where I think it's the Pluto influence, is that innovation, is that you know, innovation and technology, and you know, Bitcoin and crypto is a collective movement. So yeah, we are going to fight it out. We are going to fight for this. And you know, so yeah, we can see some power struggles, conflicts happening within the financial sector, maybe disputes over regulations, security issues. And again, it's all about market control. That's all it is at the end of the day. So yeah. While it's a challenging aspect, it also brings opportunities for profound transformation and innovation. So like advances in blockchain technology, significant changes in how Bitcoin is perceived could really has the potential to emerge during this period as well. So yeah.
Yeah. And you know, I believe you said it, but I'll just re-underline that is a transit, like not specifically for Bitcoin. That's like on the macro. And then if we go into Bitcoin, even though it's a couple days later, but you know, it'll start to touch it prior to it on June 14th, you have then the moon that's square the natal Pluto of Bitcoin. And you know, you used very similar words to what I like had with this is emotional intensity, it's potential power struggles, it's profound transformations. It's not just, you know, death, but what is Pluto? It's death and rebirth. Like we like conflict, certain types of conflict, the productive conflicts that is like, okay, let's confront one another. Let's have conversations. Let's figure out where we need to go and what we need to improve to then get to the next level. And so that actually then is happening at the same time as the moon also being trine, so harmonious aspect to the natal Jupiter. And we love Jupiter, we love harmonious aspects, and that brings a more positive sentiment to all of this for Bitcoin, for that transformation, once again, for that longevity. So this is a positive sentiment. It brings optimism, potential growth and expansion. So this, I don't feel like is going to be favorable to price, but I do feel like it's going to be increased market activity. So we're going to have more, you know, Gemini season, just more people here, more people involved, more transactions occurring, more buys and sells. So in the long run, once again, this is just like preparing for continuous adoption and expansion of Bitcoin. So that's that just aligns with that energy, specifically then than to Bitcoin. And that day as well, there's the transiting Jupiter, which is sextile the Bitcoin's natal moon. So Jupiter again, would you like to touch on that one?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that that is a positive, again, is a
Yeah.
positive aspect. Like it's a harmonious aspect for sure. So it's bringing in, and I think it just is like very sort of symbolic. The flow of this episode is that we've come through this conflict, and then we're coming back into a period of positive market sentiment, which again is increased investment opportunities. And it's more like emotional stability among investors. Like there's a sense of that there, because we're looking at like the moon is always this emotional body. And so this aspect creates these like favorable conditions for Bitcoin's growth, potentially leading to some new milestones. So that's not necessarily like milestones in the price, like possibly. But I also think like this is maybe a time where we're going to see maybe some announcements around like, oh, another country is adopting Bitcoin, or a country is like adopting strategy, like a big publicly listed company, something like that, I think. And again, it's just that confirmation of like they're seeing what I'm seeing, they're seeing the future that I see for Bitcoin, and it's just like confirmation and confidence, and it like eases our emotions. And I think I can see that for that period of time. So, but I agree with you as well. I think that it's like a crunchy time mid-month, and then we sort of like come out of that a little bit more favorable. And then, but I think towards later in the month as well, we've got some other things that I want to touch on. Do you have anything else after that one?
Yeah, so we've got June 15th that we have Mercury and Venus that are in opposition to the natal Pluto, and at the same time Mercury and Venus are trine the natal Venus. So there it is. Once again, you've got beautiful harmonious but transformation and death and rebirth occurring with Pluto. So this indicates once again it's power struggles, intense communications, revelation of hidden information as well with Mercury and that challenging aspect with Pluto. Something might come out. These dynamics might lead to significant market movements and require, of course, careful management from our end. Then the trine between Mercury and Venus with the natal Venus is that more positive sentiment, and also like a lot of people being attracted to Bitcoin. Venus is very big on attraction. So with that positive transit, it's just more people flowing into Bitcoin, and it's also beneficial for partnerships. So I feel like this is like you just said, it's partnerships as in like countries accepting more Bitcoin. That's the type of partnerships that I see happening.